The Business Buzz.
Good evening. Welcome to the Business Buzz, where we focus on news and activities centered around the global and local economy. I'm Piruni Karunaratna. Let's start off with the headlines for tonight. 22 projects from the UDA. Oil prices soar on Red Sea fears. Government mulls applications for 10 more casinos. US allows Bitcoin to be part of mainstream investing funds. We start out with some market news. There have been developments in the much-awaited sale of government telecommunications giant Sri Lanka Telecom, with 3 major investors expressing their interest. 3 companies have submitted expressions of interest for the purchase of Sri Lanka Telecom, according to the government's state-owned enterprises restructuring unit. The 3 investors are Jio Platforms Limited of Gujarat, India, Fortune International Investment Holding Limited, which was submitted by Capital Alliance Limited, and Petigo Commercial International LDA, which was submitted by NDB Investment Bank Limited. Jio Platforms is a unit of Reliance Industries, which is one of India's giant diversified corporations, while Petigo is part of the Lanka Mobile Group, which has its headquarters in the United Kingdom. The proposals are to be evaluated under special guidelines of divestiture of state-owned enterprises. The financial advisor to the sale is the International Finance Corporation. The visiting team of the International Monetary Fund met with President Ranil Wickremesinghe during its ongoing 9-day mission to evaluate Sri Lanka's progress on economic reforms. The visiting International Monetary Fund mission has urged the government to take firm action in the areas of bank recapitalization, property tax and an anti-corruption commission. The President's media division said that these areas were discussed at length when the IMF team met President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The main areas of focus include a new public financial management law, potential conflicts with the public-private partnership law, electricity tariffs and urgent preparations for property taxation. The statement said that the meeting also highlighted the urgency of addressing fiscal matters, including passing amendments to the Banking Act and recapitalizing the banking sector. On the governance front, operationalizing the Anti-Corruption Commission, publishing action plans and meeting with the Constitutional Council for insights into commissioner selection processes were discussed. The IMF team arrived on the 11th of January on a 9-day mission to evaluate overall progress of economic reforms, during which they are meeting with the President, Prime Minister and officials of the Finance Ministry and Central Bank. Sri Lanka's government may be bankrupt, but that is not stopping it from continuously trying to obtain investment for various projects around the country. Now, the Urban Development Authority said recently that it is finalizing 22 new projects in the areas of tourism, IT, mixed development, waterfront and residential.
The Urban Development Authority is trying to finalize 22 projects which it intends to commence from 2024, according to a senior UDA official. Another 5 projects are in the process of being cleared by the Cabinet. The land value of these projects have been estimated at 21 billion rupees in government-owned lands. Any investor would need to invest in a long-term lease of the lands and pump in money for the project itself. Some of the projects are already having buildings on them. These include Gafoor Building in Petta, the Galle Post Office, the Bogambara Prison in Kandy. Any project in these must conserve the historic buildings and are most suited for tourism projects. Other projects are earmarked on bare lands. One of the ongoing investments is for the Presidential Palace in Jaffna that is being converted into an Information Technology University in partnership with the Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology and a foreign private investment. There are also 2 waterfront projects along the Berry Lake. Other projects are the Ekala Industrial Park and the Perahara project in Kolpiti. There has already been significant interest from investors from China, Japan and South Korea.
Now, there is great news for cryptocurrency enthusiasts. The United States government has made a long-awaited decision to allow Bitcoin to be part of mainstream investing funds. The US government has approved what are known as spot Bitcoin exchange traded funds or ETFs, which can be purchased by anyone from pension funds to ordinary investors. The announcement from the head of the Securities and Exchange Commission was accompanied by a stern warning about risks associated with the asset. The US financial watchdog had repeatedly rebuffed earlier requests for approvals, citing concerns about potential for fraud and manipulation. However, a US court said last year its justification was inadequate. SEC Chairman Gary Gensler said on Wednesday that investors should not mistake the new approvals for an endorsement of the cryptocurrency. He said, Bitcoin is primarily a speculative, volatile asset that is also used for illicit activity including ransomware, money laundering, sanction evasion and terrorist financing. Investors should remain cautious about the myriad risks associated with Bitcoin and products whose value is tied to crypto. ETFs are portfolios that allow investors to bet on multiple assets without having to buy any themselves. An ETF could comprise a combination of gold and silver bullion, for example, or a mixture of shares in both top technology and insurance companies. About a dozen investment companies, including BlackRock and Fidelity, have been waiting for months for the SEC to give them the green light to start buying Bitcoin for their own ETFs. Billions of dollars are expected to pour into the Bitcoin market as financial companies start buying the digital coin. With the US giants entering the market, most people are expecting the value of Bitcoins to rise with demand. The price of Bitcoin has risen 106% over the past 12 months. Tourism Minister Harin Fernando says that the government is having discussions with the International Monetary Fund with regard to obtaining an exemption of the value-added tax or VAT for the destination management companies. Prior to the 18% VAT being implemented on the 1st of January 2024, destination management companies were exempt from value completely. The reasons for this include the need to support the tourism industry, which is a thrust industry that is currently doing relatively well in terms of helping Sri Lanka's battered economy to try to recover. Now, many of Sri Lanka's hotels are already booked up to 85% of their room capacities up to April, and there are bookings going up to October. Trying to levy an additional 18% tax now on such pre-bookings would inevitably lead to a massive number of cancellations. Fernando noted that especially from 0 to 18%, you cannot do right away. We have already made bookings upfront until October 2024. In addition, it is relatively easy for such companies to carry out their financial transactions overseas and avoid bringing money into Sri Lanka completely. Minister Harin Fernando noted that the biggest danger is if they start opening offshore accounts. If the DMC companies do not bring the money into Sri Lanka and put the funds elsewhere and make payments elsewhere, then this whole concept will fall apart in relation to taxes. Sri Lanka Tourism Promotions Bureau Managing Director Nalin Fernando added that they have to make sure that the remittances come into the country. By introducing VAT system to the DMCs, there is a possibility that they can do their transactions in another country. So that's the issue they have. They are lobbying with the IMF. The State Minister of Finance told the Parliament that the government has received applications to set up 10 more new casinos. The State Minister was responding to queries by the opposition as to whether new casinos have already been approved. State Minister of Finance Ranjit Siambalapite told the Parliament that the government of Sri Lanka is evaluating 10 applications to set up casinos. The State Minister said that no licenses have been issued so far. Opposition parliamentarian Lakshman Kiriyala requested that casinos not to be set up in the regions of Kandy, Sripada and Anuradhapura, which are sacred areas. Casinos are charged 500 million rupees as a renewable fee for 5 years. They also have to pay 15% on revenues and collect a $50 fee from Sri Lankan casino players. The State Minister said that the government planned to increase the fee to $200 over 3 years to discourage locals playing in casinos. The prices of gold and silver increased significantly immediately following the airstrikes by the United States and the United Kingdom on the Houthis in Yemen, sparking fears of a wider Middle Eastern war. Gold is traditionally viewed by central banks around the world as a safe haven for investment during times of crisis, and investments in gold typically increase when such a crisis occurs. In the 24 hours following the US and UK airstrikes on Yemen, the prices of gold increased by 1.03%. The price of silver, which often shadows the fluctuation of the price of gold and is also viewed as a safe haven asset, increased by 1.93% during that time. Now, US natural gas futures jumped more than 9.5% over the last week due to a larger than expected storage withdrawal and anticipated extreme cold weather in North America, which are set to drive gas demand to record levels. A bitter Arctic cold front causing extremely low temperatures is sweeping through North America. This cold front is expected to set records and cause disruptions with snowstorms, sleet and rain. As a result, US utility companies pulled 140 billion cubic feet of gas from storage last week, surpassing market expectations of a 119 billion cubic feet decline. Furthermore, freezing infrastructure may hinder production. Chicago may experience temperatures below -23 degrees Celsius, and parts of the Rockies could face wind chills as low as -34.4 degrees Celsius. However, despite the bullish trend in gas futures, gas in storage currently exceeds the seasonal average by 11.6%, with meteorologists predicting warmer temperatures for January 22nd to 26th in the United States. The heightened conflict in the Middle East has resulted in global crude oil prices increasing rapidly over the past 2 weeks, which is a worrying sign for the world's economy. So far during the month of January, West Texas Intermediate futures increased by 5.23% and Brent futures by 4.25% respectively. Prices are being driven by fears of a wider Middle Eastern conflict. The Houthis of Yemen have vowed revenge against the US and UK, following the airstrikes against Houthi military installations on Friday and Saturday. In addition, the seizing of a Marshall Islands flagged tanker carrying 146,000 tons of oil by Iran also heightened the tensions in the market. These increases came despite an increase in production by both OPEC and non-OPEC nations during the same period. Reuters reported that the rates of container shipping have risen sharply following the escalation of the conflict in the Middle East. Container shipping rates for key global trade routes have soared this week, with the United States and United Kingdom airstrikes on Yemen stirring fears of a prolonged disruption to the global trade in the Red Sea, which is one of the world's busiest routes. Most container ships were already avoiding the nearby Suez Canal and Red Sea, a shortcut between Asia and Europe that handles 12% of global trade. Now, with the US and UK militaries heavily engaged in action with the Houthis of Yemen, most shipping lines have switched to a much longer route around Africa. That stoked fears that rates for oil tankers and bulk carriers that ferry vital commodities could surge, raising the risk of a new round of global inflation. The benchmark Shanghai Containerized Freight Index was up over 16% week on week. The index, which measures non-contract spot rates for container shipments out of China's ports, has gained 114% since mid-December. Leading shipbroker Clarksons said that rates on the Shanghai-Europe route rose 8.1% from a week earlier, while the rate for containers to the unaffected US West Coast soared 43.2% week on week. Peter Sand, chief analyst at freight platform Zeneta, said the longer this crisis goes on, the more disruption it will cause to ocean freight shipping across the globe, and costs will continue to rise.
The Business Buzz.
Let's now take a look at some of the corporate events in the news. It's not often that Sri Lanka's apparel workers get to hobnob with royalty, but they did get the chance recently as Britain's Princess Anne came visiting.
Princess Anne, Britain's Princess Royal and sister of King Charles III, paid a visit to an MAS holding factory in Katunayaka. Princess Anne was in the country to celebrate 75 years of diplomatic relations between the two countries. She was accompanied by her husband, Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Lawrence. The princess toured MAS Nirmana, the Product Creation Development Centre of MAS Active. She was greeted by senior officials of MAS, including Suren Fernando, CEO of MAS Holdings, Mudita Fernando, CEO of MAS Active, Gihan Philip, Director Innovations at MAS Active, and Anura Vijayaratna, Director Product Development and Technical at MAS Active.
The Sirasa Emergency Ambulance Service is certainly one of the most important services in Sri Lanka, which has saved thousands of lives. Now, Seat Kalani Holdings, a premier supplier of vehicle tires, recently renewed its agreement to keep these ambulances on the road.
Siat Kalani Holdings recently renewed its commitments to Sirasa, undertaking to provide tyres for 5 ambulances free of charge and also providing tyres for the remainder of the 322 strong ambulance fleet at a special price that is only marginally above the cost of production. Sirasa ambulances travel more than 25,000 kilometers a day on their missions of mercy. Siat Kalani will produce customized Rhino Plus tyres with the emergency number 1990 imprinted on the sides of the tyres for better mind recall among the public of the emergency hotline number. Sirasa was established in 2016 with assistance from the Government of India. Siat Kalani Holdings currently manufactures half of Sri Lanka's requirement of pneumatic tyres and exports 20% of its production to 16 countries. Union Bank has appointed Dilshan Rodrigo as its new Deputy CEO with effect from the 15th of January. Dilshan is a top banking professional with over 2 decades in the industry. He last served as Executive Director, Chief Operating Officer of Hatton National Bank. Sri Lanka's leading low-cost airline Fitzair has obtained approval to carry out in-flight self-catering. Fitzair Catering promises wallet-friendly meal choices, mixing affordability with variety. It includes a range of snack packs and refreshments. The airline is also focused on using locally sourced items to support homegrown brands. Cargill's Bank was awarded the honour of ringing the opening bell at the Colombo Stock Exchange to signify the successful completion of its initial public offering and listing on the CSE. Share of Cargill's Bank have commenced trading on the main board under the ticker symbol CBNK. The IPO was oversubscribed by 3 times. On its debut trading day, Cargill's Bank saw 9.6 million shares changing hands. It closed at 810 rupees, up by 10 cents from its IPO price.
The Business Buzz.
Up next is Food for Thought, the segment by the Business Buzz which prompts you to ponder on the country's economic situation. They say fools rush in where angels fear to tread. A few days ago, our president surprised everyone when he grandly announced to the world that Sri Lanka would send a warship to join the US-UK coalition against the Houthis in the Red Sea. Before the Sri Lankan Navy could sail off into those troubled waters, the Houthis ramped up their attacks on shipping. The US and UK struck hard at ground targets in Yemen, and the Houthis vowed bloody retaliation against the US, UK and anyone who joined this coalition. Should we care? We should. We remember a situation in 2019 when our tourism industry was recovering very well. Then these 2 attacks took place and overnight our tourists vanished. Today, our tourism industry is one of the very few sectors of our economy that is raising its head, despite all the challenges and bringing precious foreign exchange to our beleaguered nation. What's more, it's one of the few industries where the future is actually bright. We almost made our target of 1.5 million tourists last year. With forward bookings looking rosy, it's quite likely that we will hit our 2024 target of 2.5 million tourists. But what if the Houthis decide to carry out their threat and attack nations that join the coalition? What if the Houthis stage an attack on someone like Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka is a soft target. We are not half a world away from Yemen. We also don't have the sophisticated military intelligence apparatus that would warn us of an imminent attack. Even a very small, failed attack would frighten off our tourists, drive tourism insurance rates up, bring on adverse travel advisories, and devastate our tourism industry. Right now, tourism is the golden goose that's laying the golden eggs of our economy. Let's not play around with fate. Otherwise, Sri Lankans will be left ruining yet another knee-jerk decision taken by the president, much like the last one who tried to grow rice without proper fertilizer.
The Business Buzz.
Before we conclude tonight's episode of The Business Buzz, as usual, we bring to you words of wisdom of a global business leader. Robert Kiyosaki, the notable Japanese-American businessman and author, said, "Our global economy is much more fragile than most of us realize." And that's a wrap of Business Buzz for tonight. For the Newsfirst and Business Buzz team, I am Thiruni Karunaratne. We'll see you again same time next week. Until then, Take care and good night.
The Business Buzz.